Welcome back to the Keep It Healthy podcast. Today, we're talking with our guest, Jenny Saft, about a key but often overlooked aspect of inclusivity in the workspace. Jenny's transition from roles at companies such as Fiverr or Adyen to egg freezing led her to co-found Apryl. The company aims to support inclusive workplaces across Europe by offering fertility and family building services to all employees. Her journey, marked by the challenges of finding infertility support, inspired the creation of Apryl, which under her leadership advocates for equality and diversity in fertility services. Apryl distinguishes itself by providing comprehensive support, from consultation to treatment, ensuring that everyone has a chance at parenthood regardless of personal circumstances. This is more than just a fertility benefit. It's a step toward eliminating inequality in the workspace and promoting a culture of support and development. Beyond Apryl, Jenny is an angel investor with a unique approach to business, emphasizing intuition over conventional wisdom. Today, we'll look at her insights on leadership, April's impact on workspace integration, and her vision to make fertility benefits the standard in Europe. Join us to learn more about Jenny's journey and April's mission to change the future of work.
Welcome to Keep IT Healthy podcast, the show hosted by people making things happen in technology, aiming to optimize healthcare delivery, health, well-being, and fitness. My name is Jan Kamiński and I'm the co-founder of Apryl, a company dedicated to improving the quality of life with IT solutions and digital advisory. We started making this podcast to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward.
Living in San Francisco, that this topic of egg freezing was very top of mind for me for a while. And so when I turned 32, I was like, maybe I have to consider this for myself. And so I very naively went to my gynecologist and said like, look, I think I want to do this. Let's start together now. And then she looked at me and was like, Jenny, you have to find a fertility clinic to do that. And only then I realized that I actually had no idea on where to go, how it works, what it costs. And I started to do some research and, found a clinic, started the process. But I got so frustrated very quickly. And mostly because doctors in Europe never learn to have a proper sales conversation with you. I ended up paying over 7,000 euros, which is a lot of money, right? Other people buy a car for that. So I had a certain expectation towards a service level that was just not there. And so I kind of started complaining, but not to the doctor, but mostly to my friends. I said hey, how is this possible? And I have a lot of founder friends in Berlin as well. And at some point they said, Jenny, stop complaining, do something about it. If you do it, I'll be your first angel investor. And I think that's kind of how I got into this whole market and how I thought, okay, the infertility space, I think it's a no-brainer that it's a growing market. We're just getting older and older. We're having kids later and later in life, but our biology is not really moving in the same direction. So I strongly believe that, infertility is going to be the biggest health dilemma of our generation. So it felt very natural to kind of build something in that space.
And how do you see the emerging technologies shaping the future of the treatments? Fertility treatments and in general, the family planning services.
I think we're still in the very early phases of that space. I think what we see and where we started was a lot about giving people access, because right now you have usually that there are three big problems, and it's a stigma around it, right? It's like if you have problems conceiving naturally, you're not going to talk to anyone. So it's a high stigma. It's super expensive to do it. A lot of these treatments, they cost several thousands of euros. So how do you do it? And then it's also kind of information. It's how do you actually start with a treatment? Where do you go? And I think this is super limited. So I think a lot of what we do is not even technically advanced. It's just by having more information online, also removing the stigma. And in our case, kind of also removing the financial barriers to these treatments. I think that's a first step. But of course, now that we are in this space for several years, we also see more on the medical technology side, right? So there's a lot of things that are improving right now. And it starts with simple diagnostics. Do you always have to go to a lab, or can you do fertility testing in the comfort of your home? There's better ways to maybe do the IVF, the in vitro fertilization techniques. One of our investors, he's also a co-founder of a company that's trying to improve or make egg freezing and IVF cheaper and better by taking out the human error. Because right now there's still a human being, an embryologist in the lab that puts together egg and sperm manually. And so, there's a lot of kind of opportunity if you implement like a machine or like a computer into that process, that the outcomes will be much better. And so this goes on very, very long. So there's still so much we can do better. But generally, yeah, it's a very exciting space to be in.
Okay, but how did you came up with the idea? Because as I understand, it's a service, it's a B2B service for companies.
Yeah, exactly. So we started the company initially more B2C because we wanted to really understand the market. I don't come from the medical field. My co-founder Toby doesn't come from the medical field. So we knew we had to kind of understand like what's going on, what are the pain points of patients, what are the pain points of clinics, how does the market pricing work, and so on. But we very quickly realized that, we looked at all the different business models out there. We knew we wanted to stay in this infertility space. But we looked at all the different business models out there. And to be honest, like also in the US, the business model that works the best from a VC perspective, right, is still the B2B benefit space, mainly driven from the US, because in the US, obviously, the healthcare system is not so great. And so employers always had to kind of jump in and kind of pay like healthcare or insurance for their employees. In Europe, that's not really the case, right? Because like our healthcare system is designed slightly different. And so we're just learning slowly that, there's a path for an employer to kind of jump in and provide and pay for healthcare, pay for family planning, even though it's not the most natural thing for a lot of people in Europe. But we thought, we saw there's a lot going on in the US in this space, but we also saw that there's no player or provider in Europe. And so we jumped on that opportunity and said, we're going to occupy that space.
So if you can describe it, how your product, as I understand that, productivized service assists individuals and couples in their family planning journey. I know that a model is directed towards companies, but of course, individuals benefit and couples benefit. So if you can give us more info on that.
Yeah, so in the end, we're like a B2B2C model. So it's a fertility and family forming benefits platform. That means we support employees with everything from egg freezing, sperm freezing, IVF, so in vitro fertilization, adoption, or surrogacy. So whatever is needed to support someone on their path to parenthood, and whatever is legal in the country of employment. Because Europe is also very fragmented. It's like there's still countries where egg freezing is illegal, or where egg donation is illegal, or surrogacy is illegal. And so we're navigating this for the employee, but also for the employer. So from an employer perspective, when a company works with us, all the employees get access to our platform. And then we navigate employees through 3 core steps. It's number 1 is what we call know your option. Number 2 is find the right clinic. And number 3 is get reimbursed. And so it's the whole kind of journey from like, what options or what treatments do I have? And you can do this through content or kind of consultations with our in-house care team. It's the second one is like find a clinic, because a lot of your options probably have to do with a fertility clinic or an agency when it comes to adoption or surrogacy. And so we build our own database in that space where we really help you to navigate through and decide which clinic is probably the right one for you. And then the last one, that's kind of optional for employers, but ideally your employer gives you a certain budget that you can use towards a treatment. That's like 5,000 euros. And so a lot of kind of fertility treatments are self-pay treatments. So very often you'll get an invoice and you can then upload that invoice to our platform. We do the whole claim management in the background and then make sure that the money gets paid out to the employee's bank account. The nice thing is that it's pretty much anonymized, because your supervisor never has to approve that you get the money back. Your supervisor will also never know that what treatment you've actually used.
Probably that differs across countries, right? So you need to have a personalized service per country, or how does that work?
So what we've done, and I think this is like the complexity of Europe, is like we analyze like what's the statutory healthcare system in each and every country. So what is covered by the government, what's not. And then the other part is what is actually legal in the country of employment and what's not. And for what group, right? We're also talking about do same-sex couples have access? Do singles have access to certain treatments and so on? And so we really built our platform with this complexity of Europe in mind. And so definitely what we will always do is to check, is there any statutory healthcare support that your government is providing? So we're gonna tap into that first. And whatever is then kind of left over, whatever the delta is, this is what you use your April budget for.
You mentioned privacy. Probably that's these data are sensitive and these things are in general very private. So how does that work? You mentioned some of that, but as you mentioned, your supervisor does not know that you do it. The company they can probably do the refund to some extent. It's probably based on the size of the company or their corporate, etc., depending on their, regulations and internal, let's say, internal policies. But as I understand, you cannot track who actually used the platform. It's rather you have some anonymous data on how people use that, or rather how many, but you don't know in general who exactly and what did they do. What did they
use?
Do?
Yeah. So obviously we know all the details, but from a reporting perspective, we will always kind of provide anonymized data so we have normal quarterly business reviews with our clients, and then we would say hey, from your total population, workforce population, what's the percentage that use the treatment? How many use egg freezing versus IVF, male versus female, in a relationship, single? So we have a lot of anonymized data in that sense. And the cool thing is, obviously, when you have we work with a few smaller companies, but ideally this is a service that's usually done in bigger companies when you have several thousands of employees. So everything from member information, so who has access, is automated, but also the payroll or kind of the payout process is also automated. Right now the reimbursement happens through payroll because it is a taxable benefit. So from a tax perspective, there needs to be kind of a feedback loop to the payroll system, but it's more or less because it's automated. Your supervisor doesn't usually get on a monthly basis your payslip. Obviously, someone in the payroll team could check if they have your employee ID. They could kind of trace it, but in a very big company, that's very unlikely to happen.
Right. When I was doing the research, I know you talk a lot about inequality and inclusivity. I know that your mission includes overcoming workspace inequality. So, how does integrating technology into fertility and family planning benefits impact the employer-employee relations and, of course, the workspace diversity that I know you talked a lot?
Yeah. Good question. I think to kind of start, I think it's important to understand what the stats are, right? And when we talk about fertility, and usually it's 17% of the population struggle with infertility. It's public information. That's kind of how it is. And I think it's important to understand also how infertility affects women differently than men. For women, they say that at age 35, already 90% of your female egg cell reserve is gone, right? Because women are born with all the eggs they'll ever have, and over time that reserve is going down. And by 35, 90% is already gone. That means after age 35, it usually gets harder to get pregnant naturally. And this has to do with the amount of eggs, but also with the quality of eggs, right? Which can lead to more higher chances of miscarriages and so on. But it's also important to say infertility is not a female problem alone. The opposite, it's actually infertility is equally caused by men and women. So they say that from all infertility cases, 40% are caused by women, 40% are caused by men, and 20% is a mix of both, or it's unknown. Different with men and women is that, obviously men always have reproduced sperm every day, but it also means all their negative lifestyles affect their sperm as well, right? Smoking, drinking, no workouts, and so on. And so I think very often that's kind of what influences the male infertility as well. What's also important to say is that, it's also a little bit of a social dilemma. In Germany, there's data that says that 50% of women with an academic degree do not have kids at age 35. And half of them stay childless. And so what this says is that people that have a higher educational level do not have enough kids. And where do you think all these people with an academic degree work? They work at the tech companies, they work at the law firms, at the consulting companies, at the big enterprise firms. And so now we're looking at like these enterprise firms, and what is their biggest problem? It's still the shortage of talent. They need the best top people. And so the big question is like, how do you get the best people? And with all the companies, and especially with this like the new generation that's coming up, Gen Z and so on, you need to prove as a company that you're family friendly, that you support women in specific management positions, that you support your LGBTQ community. And so how many other options do you have? It's not enough anymore to put a rainbow flag on your website or to celebrate International Women's Day. You have to actually put your money where your mouth is. And so I'm not saying fertility benefits is the only solutions, but it's definitely a piece to the puzzle.
It's quite a sensitive topic in a sense. So what were some of the biggest operational and technological challenges that Apryl faced in offering comprehensive range of the treatments, and especially including that I know that more complex options like surrogacy or adoption, and in companies. So
Yeah.
what was the first initial reaction when you were testing the model and trying to get the market fit?
When we pivoted from B2C, and it was like egg freezing for women in Germany, to like B2B, and then suddenly we do like everything from egg freezing to surrogacy, but not only in Germany, but also all over Europe, with the same size of team. Like everyone told us you're crazy, right? It was like, because it was like a very crazy move. But at the same time, we also knew it's the only way to have like a competitive offering out there. We needed to have this very broad scale. And so obviously in the beginning, it was tough. We had to understand like the first 5 countries took us forever. How to list down, how do you compare, how do you create a framework? But I think this is the magic lies in this word framework. The more countries you add on, the more you see patterns, you understand the concept, and you understand that, the infrastructure is very similar in all the countries. It's more around understanding the healthcare system, understanding how doctors operate, how invoices are being done, how the regulatory system is working, how clinics getting accreditations and so on. And so it's a learning curve. And after a while, we are now live in like over 40 countries. And we're actually in the process of expanding to Asia and Latin America as well, because once you have 40 countries, it's actually very easy to add another 20 or 30 here and there, because like the complexity doesn't get like bigger and bigger. It's actually getting less because you captured a lot. And I think this is still it's complex. I don't want to say like what we're building is rocket science. It's more about the complexity and a lot of like knowledge and content, and making that accessible to people, not only to our members, but also kind of to our own people, right? And so our employees, and so that they can do the best consultation possible, because it's so much. And maybe you have like at some point a kind of employee or like a member on our platform. Maybe she works in the UK, but then suddenly she has a question about, I don't know, India, for example. So very quickly, our knowledge needs to be prepared in such an easy way that everyone can just kind of say like, oh, I'll do the consultation for India now, no problem. And so we really designed it in a way that even if you would start in our company now, you could do the best consultation ever about like all the treatments, all the regulatory sides, within a few minutes, because that's kind of how we build it up.
It sounds complicated, but from the process perspective, from the technological perspective, let's say what aspect was the most challenging for the platform development and further expansion? Obviously,
it's usually going from we are live in like 2 countries, and then we're live in like 5 countries, and then suddenly we have more members on the platform. It's getting bigger and bigger, right? And in the beginning, you just build something together because it's an MVP and it somehow works. And then after a while, you realize, the platform needs to be more flexible. It needs to be, different contracts, different clients want to have different things. And so we're actually revamping our own back end structure more and more at the moment. I think it's something that our back end engineers are very excited about because it's finally like upgrading and having more logic in place that kind of reflects the complexity that we are also showcasing in the front.
I want to get back to the market itself, because we had a few FemTech founders in the podcast, and I want to talk about your journey as a founder. I know you got a pretty big round for the FemTech industry, 4.1 million euros. So, how easy it was to convince the VCs?
So it wasn't easy. That's the short answer. No, I think it was never easy, and I think it will never be easy. Because we are, even though I wouldn't really say we are a femtech solution, because we're obviously providing our services to women and men, but I get it, right? If you need to put us or label us, then femtech is probably like the topic. It's like it's B2B. You could say it's HR tech, it's health tech. It has a lot of different angles because we're in such a funny niche. But still, it's in the femtech industry, and we are kind of a co-founder team. So I have my co-founder is Toby. He's a man, but obviously I'm doing the investor relations part, and so people see me as a woman pitching for a femtech solution, and on the other side of the table, you're always mostly men. Not necessarily in the exploration phase, because I think a lot of the VCs added a lot of female investment managers, associates, and so on. But I think on the partner side, on the decision maker side, very rarely you'll find some female faces. And so I think all the female investment managers were always very excited about what we're doing. And they were like, oh, wow, I love this. This makes so much sense. And when you you pitch it to the partners, or you sit in the IC where there's a 99% male distribution, then suddenly they're like, yeah, we don't see this. We don't believe this is coming. And I think what helped us a lot was obviously the market dynamic in the US, where the big providers, like the big competitors, you can see a Progeny, they're already publicly listed. You have a Carrot Fertility and a Maven Clinic, already unicorns. That's how much money they raised. And so I think it was kind of very imaginable for a lot of VCs at some point then to say, I see the potential. I think if we build there's room for a very strong European competitor. And so I think that's why, or kind of how we could convince them. And also we said like, it's a big round, but yeah, we're also building a B2B2C model. It's not just a digital tool. You need to have B2B sales, you need to have a product team, you need to have the consultants that kind of do the work, you do clinic relationships and so on. So it requires also a little bit of operational resources.
Okay, but you're also an angel investor yourself. I've noticed that you invested in one company, or is it more?
So I'm in 2021, I was asked to join the Atomico Angel Program. Atomico is a VC fund in the UK, and they have this angel program where they give people that are not the typical VCs a certain amount of money that they can then invest in startups. And so I've done this for the last 3 years now. I've done around 10 investments, I would say. Very broadly, I usually say my investment thesis is like, I usually invest in either a team with at least one female founder or a founder from an underrepresented group, whatever that means, and everything that makes the world a better place. Also, it's very broad, but I usually don't invest in like revenue ops tools, or it's usually in healthcare, sometimes also in fintech if there's a cool angle to it. Sometimes mental health as well. So it's very broad, but that's kind of my approach.
But you can, combine being a founder and an investor at the same time. What's your strategy for that?
Yeah, the good thing is I can do it a little bit on the side, right? There's no pressure for me to make any investments. It's like I don't have to, but like sometimes I think the cool thing is that when you are a founder, you also have exposure to a lot of other founders, because there's always the new generation that's coming up that wants to talk to you in general for advice, or there's a whole kind of group of friend, a circle of friends. They all start companies here and there, and so you have a lot of access and deal flow, and so that's cool. Yeah, but yeah, in the beginning, it's like, and there's also, there are companies that are in the same stage now than us, right? And it's like, why am I an angel when I'm like, I can't really give you any advice because you're probably already ahead of me now. But I think what was super helpful for me, and I very often do these investments together with my co-founder Toby, is like it helped us a little bit to also better understand how we position us in front of VCs and how other people position themselves in front of VCs, right? I also obviously see a lot of decks from male founders and how they kind of project their market and what they're going to build and how great they are, which is very different to, I think, naturally what I would do. But I think it helped a lot to kind of put things a little bit in perspective and adjust and kind of create my own tone. So I actually really, I think it was very helpful for us.
We talked a bit about trends, but I know machine learning is becoming a huge trend, obviously. I know that obviously from the perspective that it can help patients make better decisions. But I was doing the research and I saw that you mentioned AI and how it's currently being used or in the future at Apryl. Could you expand on that?
Obviously, it's a no-brainer that this will make our product better and also operationally a little bit easier. I mean, I touched earlier on this, the complexity of knowledge in our field and kind of on our product and understanding what's going on. And so right now, I think it's a little bit dangerous to start optimizing or automating these things too early, right? I think there's a lot of scenarios that we still need to learn from and that we need to understand and adjust. But after a certain kind of learning curve, I think it's very straightforward to put this into a model and kind of just help mostly our people internally, first of all, to do better consultations and to find answers quicker instead of just like reading through text manually, but like having a little bit of a chatbot help. I mean, that's already works now, right? We have a lot of our knowledge base is sitting in Notion. So Notion has its own kind of chatbot that's kind of fair. So that I think this is a very low maintenance kind of introduction into that field. And everything else, I think, I'm not so sure if we are going to become the craziest AI machine learning company. I think we'll generally benefit from a lot of the technologies that are getting invented right now. And I think what's also going to be benefiting from this progress is also the actual IVF, what I touched on earlier, the actual IVF treatments, right? It's like if you bring in machines into this very manual process of creating embryos and working with sperm and egg cells and so on, I think you can reduce the risk of like losing it much more. You can find better, you can build better algorithms, better, visual recognition techniques to find the best cells and so on. So I think that's what I'm actually really excited about, which in the end also means that on our platform we'll have more babies, because our biggest KPIs, right, what's the outcome is like people starting families and having babies and pregnancies. And so the better the technology will be on that end, the better the outcome will be on our end as well.
Since we are at the future, let's say, what's the plan? Like let's say from 3 to 5. I know it's a lot, but I know that most founders think in long term. So what's your strategy?
If you look at how it started in the US, fertility benefits, it started in 2014 when Sheryl Sandberg announced that they're going to do it at back then Facebook, and then suddenly the Amazons and the Googles and the eBays followed a few years later, the consulting companies, the banks. And today, 10 years later, you have companies like Walmart, like big supermarket chains announcing that they're going to offer fertility benefits to their employees, right? Which offers, it's like from a very elite product suddenly to a mass market a kind of product. And so I think in Europe, we're very early on, we're seeing like Meta announced it, Amazon actually announced it, Google is currently doing an RFP, Merck, the pharma company, announced it. So we see like we're in this very early phase. And so that's why I'm very, very excited about the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, actually. Because if in 10 years, we can actually onboard a big supermarket chain or 5, that also shows me what impact I've done on society, because that means like a very big part of the population has more access to fertility treatment. And I think that's super exciting.
And I think what would be interesting is if you can give one or how many you want, obviously, advice for other early angel investors that want to start or get into health tech. For example, I know that's not the only vertical you're active in, but in general, what would be your advice there?
Interesting. So I actually started, so before I started the Atomico program, I also started investing a bit with my own money, not crazy amounts, but I felt like I saw how I benefited from angel investors, and I somehow want to give something back. And so I joined a syndicate in Berlin managed by a guy that I knew, and he said like, hey Jenny, if you want to do this, like we're focusing a lot on like sustainability. If you want to join, then you can also understand how it works. And I think looking back, that was probably the best decision because I didn't have to do it all by myself. There was someone that was managing the process, managing the due diligence, and also managing the whole kind of financial aspect and the contracting and so on. Because back then I didn't have, I obviously I do have my own entity that holds kind of the shares of my own company for tax reasons. But I think it's something that's a lot in the beginning that you have to figure out. And so I think under the shield or the umbrella of the syndicate, it was much easier for me to do my first own investment. And now with the Atomico program, it's not my own money. And so it's a little bit different there as well. But I think it's always a good advice to start with smaller amounts. You always have to be very aware that the money will be gone. Very likely the money is gone forever. And I think that's something why not a lot of people are doing it, because it's also, my first ticket was like 5K and I think my second one was 10K. It's still like and then I did another one, but it's like if 10 to 20K are gone, that's a lot of money that's suddenly just in the trash somewhere. So you also have to make sure that you make investments that you believe in. And so for me, it's like I did investments that were like one is a B2B marketplace for recycled plastic. And it was the founder is a surfer and I surf, right? And it's like, hey, the oceans we need to clean the oceans and we need to make like a healthy business model out of this. And so for me, it's like, even if it just doesn't work out, I think I made the right decision kind of investing in this.
Joining community, I think, is a great advice, especially us for the start.
Yeah.
Jenny, thank you very much for joining us today.
No, thanks so much for having me. It was really fun.
And as a let's say the last thing I wanted to mention is like, where are you most active?
Yeah, so me personally, so I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Then we also have a website. We actually just relaunched it. So it's Apryl.co. That's where you can find all the information. Otherwise, we have 2 offices. One is in Berlin. The other one is in London. You can always send us a message and meet up.
Perfect.
Stay in touch with us. Subscribe to our podcast. Give us a like, comment, or share. If you want to reach out personally, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram.